welcome to another episode of the Inspiring Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Pursue, a bespoke leadership coaching and development company with a mission to create, nurture and develop inspiring leadership across the global education sector and beyond. My name is Nicholas Mackay, Associate Professor, Certified Professional Coach and Director of Pursue, and I'll be your host as we bring you cutting-edge leadership stories from across the world, delving into the minds of recognised education and industry experts to find out about the challenges and main issues they are facing and to gain insights into inspiring leadership. In this series, we are proud to be in partnership with Independent School Management Plus, an international school magazine, the leading authority and voice for professionals in independent and international education worldwide. If you'd like to watch the video of today's podcast, please head over to schoolmanagementplus.com. We are also supported by the Federation of British International Schools in Asia, a diverse and inclusive community of 78 leading British international schools spanning 18 countries across the Asia region. And many thanks for your continued engagement and feedback across the podcast platforms. If you'd like to join the Pursue conversation, you can just visit us on our website pursue.com, LinkedIn and Twitter at Nicholas Mackay and Pursue. So let's get on with today's episode, in which we welcome Michelle Scott, who is the founding principal of Downe House, Muscat. It's the first premium all-girls British school to open in Oman. Michelle began her career in Australia as an English and drama teacher before moving to the UK in 1997 to join Downe House as a specialist drama teacher. Over her 23-year career there, she was Director of Drama, Director of External Relations, Assistant Headmistress, and most recently, Deputy Headmistress. In January 2021, she took up the post of founding principal of Downe House Muscat, and is most definitely bringing the Downhouse DNA to Oman. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today from Muscat.
My pleasure, Nick. It's lovely to be here.
It is indeed. And I know we share a background it's kind of in the arts, you with the drama and me with the music, so it'll be interesting to unpick that a little bit as we go.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
in terms of the how I'd like to kick off today is about inspiring leadership. So, Michelle, what does inspiring leadership look like to you?
For me, I kind of come at it at two angles. What inspires me and what do I want to do to inspire other people to be the best? And I think that comes through in terms of my work with the children I'm with and with the staff and the team that I work with. And I look for inspiration, I think, in every day. And I'm an incredibly positive person. And I think for me, inspiration and inspirational leadership is about searching out opportunities and challenges and rising to them. And doing that with, as I said, with positivity and a real sense of wanting to overcome those challenges and find the opportunities. And I think in my own career, when I've been inspired most, it's when I've seen someone push through a challenge, lead by example, and really push for that success and not necessarily success in I've won or I've beaten this, but like a personal goal that's been achieved and a real sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. So I think that's where for me inspiration comes from in striving to overcome and striving to achieve.
So in terms of taking some of those key elements, Michelle, into your current project, well, how does that relate to maybe some of the challenges and opportunities you've been facing?
Well, it definitely wasn't quite what I was expecting.
Okay.
18 months ago when I first sort of was approached and decided to take on this role, and where I am today, I think the challenges that I expected have been very, very different. So I've had to almost inspire myself to lead myself through. It's been quite a solo challenge in some ways, Nick. And I think because COVID in particular has provided that challenge for me personally, but also in kind of the pre-operational stage of a school when really you're a small team and building a team. And that's certainly, I suppose, where I've kind of looked back on what I expected and where I am today.
So in terms of the school itself, Michelle, when are you looking at opening?
So the school will open fully in 2022,
Right.
and we will be ready in terms of opening our doors to visitors and starting that full recruitment process this coming September. And again, that was different to what was expected. When I started out, we were looking to open in 2021, but we couldn't get into the country. And I say we, but I couldn't get into the country.
Okay.
And obviously that's quite important in terms of starting up a school and working with the various government ministries, etc., to get everything in place to open with all the correct licensing, etc. So that was, I guess, the first thing was why everything was pushed to 2022, was so that we had a really good opportunity to have a successful pre-operations period and as a team to come together to do that. So I'm very pleased that the full opening isn't until 2022, but I'm really excited that the actual doors to the new school will be open in 2021 in just a few months' time.
In terms of you not being allowed into the country, what impact did that have on the project itself?
I think incredibly frustrating, because you have to be here in country to really get things up and running. You can do plans, you can do strategies, you can talk to people, but you actually physically need to be here on the ground. And now I feel I'm almost in a luxurious position where I'm here 18 months ahead of opening, which is also quite now unusual. So I was saying, sort of challenges turning into opportunities and making the most of that situation. Whereas if you'd asked me in November, with the prospect of still opening this coming September, how I felt about that as a founding principal or head, it was incredibly daunting. Exciting, but how do I get into the country? How do I meet the families? How do I recruit my staff? How do I actually physically get into to see the ministries, to talk about the curriculum, to make sure that we had approvals for everything? And that's impossible unless you're physically here. And obviously with the global lockdown from March, really through to October, when the airports opened here in Muscat, that was really the biggest challenge, because there was only so much you could do from a distance.
And in regards to your team, how many people are in your team, Michelle?
So at the moment, what's really interesting is there are two schools opening here in Muscat.
Right.
There's Cheltenham Muscat, which is a co-educational school from 3 to 18, and then there's Downhouse Muscat. So we're actually under the same pre-operational umbrella, which has been fantastic, because I've actually come out and been supporting Cheltenham and working alongside Crispin Dawson, who's the founding principal of Cheltenham. And so the combined team actually here in country is a grand total of 7. And
7? Across both schools?
7 of us, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we have support globally from other members of the team who are working with us and supporting us, but actually here on the ground at the moment there are 7 of us, and that's a very small pre-operational team. But I guess one of the things I would say that I've learned from this and didn't quite expect, but what has actually really excited me as well, is doing everything. You really do everything when you're starting up a school. And of course, when I've been in a school for such a long time, after 20 odd years, although I've started new initiatives and been very challenged by those throughout my career, starting something literally from the ground up. I was here and I felt the sand beneath my toes, literally, and the rocks on the site, to now having a building that's almost open, and being involved in every single aspect of that, and not an expert at any of it really in terms of pre-operations, because I'm not yet leading a school. I'm not yet in front of families and children and girls. So that's the bit that's actually been pretty brilliant.
So you kind of had to learn on the job then, you opening this school, Michelle.
Absolutely. And you can't, I'm working with a team of some who have opened schools all around the world. So that is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm not the expert by any means, and I'm supported by a fantastic team of experienced people, who have opened schools elsewhere in the world, including in the Middle East. So that is most definitely an advantage. And as I said, there's a network of people who can support us in that. But otherwise, really, it's reinventing, because again, it's a different culture, a different context. you working at some point without the kind of key things that you would expect. We had IT challenges and, all sorts of infrastructure challenges, starting new databases, MIS, everything from scratch, pupil files. There's literally nothing there to start with other than a pre-operational plan, which I said is just, spreadsheets. And then the people come into the equation and the culture and the context. And when you start to put all of that together, that's when, you have to upskill, reskill, and find your inner leader to kind of guide you through these challenges. And no job is too small. No job is beneath you when you're in a startup situation in a new international school. You have to seek, you have to find, you have to hunt, you have to gather, all of those things. There's nothing on a plate, there really isn't. And it's particularly in the context that I'm in, and because of COVID, I think in particular, we don't have the luxury of having a big staff team yet.
It's interesting, isn't it? Is it the first time that you've been living in Muscat in Oman?
Yes, as well. So, and I'm here on my own as well. So, none of which was planned. So, again, that's a personal challenge, and a decision that sort of had to be made, I suppose, when, we went to start the schools and to get out here and do what we needed to do. It was that we're going to have to come out here. I'm going to have to be here on my own, and how we'd planned to manage that, it has not panned out because of COVID. But again, I'm not miserable about that. I'm actually, again, it's a personal challenge. How do I lead myself through that and make sure that I'm managing my own well-being amongst all of that?
So in terms of all that, because there's a lot going on there, Michelle, what have you learnt about yourself throughout this project up until now?
I think, the first month was particularly challenging, moving to a new country, finding your feet, learning about the new team. We hadn't worked together. None of us had worked together before, coming together other than really virtually. And we'd met a few times, but really coming together as a pre-operational team and then recruiting some staff here, some local staff who've been absolutely amazing. I guess my resilience was definitely tested. And you think, when you're in a busy independent school in the UK, and particularly the year we've all had with COVID, etc., it's been incredible. We've all been tested in terms of our ability to manage home life and our personal, how we cope personally with working from home and trying to balance that and managing other people's anxieties as well as our own. So I think that's something that, being completely on my own here to start with, and only having colleagues to kind of lean on apart from family at home, that was really testing of my own resilience and evaluating why I was here, what I wanted to get from this, how I was going to approach it. And I had to kind of change my mindset pretty quickly in terms of what I expected it to be like, and actually what it ended up being like, particularly in that first month. It was very, very tough for all of us.
And in terms of answering your own question, why are you there?
Why am I here? I know why I'm here. When I made the decision to put myself forward for the role and take on the challenge, I was very, very ready for a different step in my career. I was very much supported by my head back in the UK, who, she felt I was ready, and we had long discussions about it. So in that sense, I was absolutely ready to take on something different. I wanted something that wasn't anything that I'd ever done before. And that was kind of a personal goal. I talked about having some personal achievements and things. And I felt I was at a stage in my career where I was ready to take on the next step of leadership. I led various teams to do lots of different things over the past 20 odd years. So I think it felt like a natural step, but a huge one. And then the why Muscat, why the Middle East, why here? Fortunately, I was involved in the project before I took on the role. So I knew the country from a sort of 3-day visit perspective a few times. My husband and I had come out to sort of explore a little bit further before committing. And so I knew that I had an affinity with with Oman and with Muscat. And I had explored other parts of the world too, in terms of where I might take myself to carry out this new challenge. And I'm really pleased I went for this. And I have a really exciting, incredibly busy and daunting time ahead of me. And I feel that the last 3 months, nearly 4 months, have really prepared me, I think, for what's to come next, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've done it myself. I've gone up, overseas many times on my own, and sometimes
Yes.
waiting for someone to join me, other times not. And there's good bits about that, especially when you're busy with a job, and there's downsides to
Exactly.
that. And it's nothing's perfect, of course. So, I really empathise with the fact that going somewhere to start a brand new project, done something that you haven't done before in a foreign place where you're not used to, the way things work, very, very, to assimilate very quickly. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, and I, part of my career before taking this on was very much international based in terms of pupil recruitment and development in other countries. So I was used to being on my own, as you said, being out doing different things. But actually, a permanent move and my whole life being here, and as you say, trying to sort of assimilate yourself in a very, very different context. To be honest, the people here are truly wonderful, and that has not been difficult, but it's just being very busy alongside trying to get settled and actually finding time to find balance as well. I think that's something I've learned in the last few years is very critical. When you get to this stage in your career, is actually where do you find that balance, and how do you create it for yourself when you've got so many other people to please at the same time?
So I suppose asking the next question, how do you create that balance, Michelle?
Uh, I deliberately do it now. I was actually reflecting with a colleague earlier on about how I used to manage my time back in the UK. Before I came here, but even before that, I made a very conscious decision to manage my time slightly differently and how to prioritize my time, so that I did find time to switch off and do things for myself. I think it's very easy, particularly when you're in a position of leadership, to feel incredibly responsible all of the time for everybody else. And I think you have to take a step back and think about yourself. And I don't always get it right, but it's about finding small things that make a difference to you. And when I did make that conscious decision, and it's small things like the time I switch off my email, I might read an email, but I choose now not to respond to it until the morning, or, really thinking about the welfare of other people and thinking, okay, what's most who needs me most, and then making sure that I still make time for myself within that. And I think it's I want to be a good role model for my team. And I think if I'm sending lengthy emails at midnight, it's not setting the right tone, I don't think. So that's just one small example of taking a step back and actually, things can wait, and learning what's really important in life.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point to make, and thank you for being so honest, Michelle. It's very, very much appreciated about how it is about prioritising the different things. And again, with a lot of the people that I coach, school leaders, that comes up a lot. About feeling guilty. I said it on previous shows here about people feeling guilty, carving time out for themselves. Which can lead down roads you don't really want to go down as a leader. Well-being spoken about a lot. So, in terms of the project itself, then.
Yes.
Do you have a standing? Is a school built?
It is almost built. It will be finished on June the 10th, to be exact. That's the handover day. I think they're 1% behind schedule. So the project director tells me, who's one of the team out here. So that's really exciting, and I'm very lucky. The building that I work in at the moment I can see the school from where I am. Where I can see the cranes, I can see the top of the building, and I can see the outside is now being painted and rendered and cladded, etc. So that's really, in terms of being something that's inspiring, being able to see that coming along and knowing it's not very far away now. So Yes, and that is one of the biggest questions that people ask me is, will the building be finished? Because there are many horror stories of particularly international schools that haven't finished on time.
Yeah.
But with the partners that we have here, we're partnered with the Ministry of Defence. So obviously there's military precision in the timing, and so I'm confident, yes, absolutely, we'll be opening our doors to families in September.
And of course, going back to you on your career, Michelle, as I said at the beginning, 23 years working within Downe House, lots of different roles, and it looks like you've had lots of exposure to different roles. So, in terms of how you're going to take the Downe House DNA, as you said, and plant it in Muscat, what are you doing to achieve that?
It's all about people, and obviously I'm the core of that. I'm like the key person that has to make sure that those values, those core values, those key attributes that drive any school, and that make a school, I suppose, unique. We like to think every school has its own uniqueness, and I think, having worked in the marketing side, where we all have our strap lines and we all have our ways of saying pretty much the same thing. So it isn't so much about the words of the DNA, but it's actually in how you communicate that and how it's embedded, truly embedded through the people in the school. And so I think for me, that's something that I will take from Emma, my previous head, in terms of the people are always at the heart of everything that we do. And therefore, if you put them first, so the girls that we teach and the families of those girls and the staff who are there to teach them and the welfare of everybody involved, then that DNA will be felt right through to your core. And I think that's something that you almost can't put into words, Nick, in the sense of it's a feeling and it's a culture and it's an ethos, and that's something that I will definitely be really striving for is when people come through this incredibly beautiful, inspiring building, that actually that's almost, you forget about that because it's the people that you meet as soon as you come in the door, and the girls that you meet and what's happening in the school is what I want everyone to remember, and then to walk away and go, and it was an amazing looking school too. That should almost be the last thing. So there's a lot I could talk for hours about the Downhouse DNA and why it's the best school in the world, and it's certainly the best school for girls, etc. But as I said, it's striving to bring that quality, but actually it's more about authenticity, and it's not just about words. It's and I have 23 years of that authenticity and living and breathing that culture and that DNA to bring here with me.
So I suppose if you have your marketing hat on, and I'm a prospective parent coming to visit, is it mostly local students, Omani students that you're looking at, or will there be expats as well?
I expect that predominantly, we're really looking at the local market,
Okay.
The Omani girls. However, there are other Arabic cultures within Oman. It's a very international community. And I think it will attract other international families because it's not about segregation. I think that's really important. And I think in the UK, we understand, single gender education is very inclusive, it's very outward looking, it's very forward thinking, and, girls, sorry, Nick, outperform boys in results. So, if you look at the number of girls' schools and the top performing schools, etc., the statistics are there. So it's about bringing the quality of education alongside the quality of the pastoral care. And that's going to be really attractive to Omani families where there is a culture of girls having girls-only education. So it's really exciting. Yeah. Really exciting.
It sounds it. So if you've got a parent coming in to have a chat with you, you say you'd be speaking to lots of parents, and I suppose like an elevator pitch, and totally understand what it's about authenticity and it being the culture of the place. But if you had to put your marketing hat on and give a little elevator pitch, what do you tell the parents? What's your differentiator?
I think it's understanding. Obviously, you do have to focus on the all girls, in the sense that it's really understanding how girls learn best, and in a very safe and nurturing environment where they can really truly be themselves. And that from the perspective of the parents here in Oman, that is something that they strive for their daughters in particular. They say things to me like, when she's around other girls, she really comes out of her shell and we see her true personality. And there is a cultural, I don't know how, if you've spent time in the Middle East, but obviously there is a cultural thing where, particularly before you're married, you spend time with your gender. So the boys stay together and the girls stay together. And you see very large groups of women and girls. And even once they're married, they socialize predominantly either with their family or with the females within their family and their friendship group. So it matches the culture very well in terms of nurture and bringing out the best. And fortunately, there is a real emphasis on women's education here in Oman, which is one of the reasons why Downhouse is here, because there's an affinity, but there's also, there's in the last 30 years or so, there's been a real push for women to go into further education, to have their own careers. And I'm pleased to say that women in Oman outperform the men in terms of their results, both at sixth form, at A level or the GED, and then on to university. So actually, I think Oman have more of an issue in terms of getting the balance back, because the women are definitely forging ahead and going into, really powerful, strong, perhaps traditionally male-orientated fields as well. There's a sense of ambition, and they're not afraid to push the boundaries and challenge stereotypes. And again, that's probably something that most people wouldn't necessarily think when they think about the Middle East. And Oman is a bit of a hidden gem. Not many people know about the country, but it's incredibly forward-thinking and very open. So that's again another really exciting factor about being here.
Is, and there seems to be a real alignment between what the country and the education that you're offering. So I suppose, in terms of getting teachers on board who are going to feed into that, what kind of characteristics are you looking for in new members of staff?
So one of the things that we have said as part of our vision is that our staff will be predominantly UK qualified and trained, so that is an authentic British education that's coming into country, and that's very appealing to those who live in Oman, not just the Omanis, but the expat community as well. There's a very strong affinity between the UK and Oman. The Anglo-Omani connection has existed for a long time through the previous Sultan Qaboos, and that's well documented. So that quality of teacher and the Britishness, and I say this as an Australian, but I've lived in the UK for a long time, so my experience is very UK centered. And that's the key thing, a really good UK centered teaching experience, and onward qualifications and experience that have been gained during that time, balanced with, because we're teaching Arabic and Islamic studies, so balanced with a really strong local sourcing of teachers from Middle East countries, as well as Omani. So one of the biggest challenges we have actually is Omanization. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Tell us more.
So there's a real push here in Oman to have higher employment rates of Omanis. So the government are very much encouraging companies to employ Omanis, which is fantastic, because they are very, very willing and capable and ambitious. And actually, it's a real opportunity for and I hate to say business, but a school like us to be recruiting from this fantastic pool of Omanis who the government are really encouraging through lots of incentives, big internship schemes here. And so that's really exciting in terms of the next 12 months for me, is choosing those teachers, onboarding them, and Emma McKendrick and myself in the UK, we're talking about how we then, in terms of the Downhouse DNA, bring those new staff. I can't do everything myself in terms of the DNA, how we onboard those staff so that they too, when they're meeting the families, they have a real sense of actually what it does mean to be a Downhouse girl and a Downhouse teacher.
What are your initial thoughts on that kind of induction into the Downhouse way?
So pre-COVID, we had some wonderful plans to do a lot of, bringing people into the UK, and bringing the staff who we were recruiting from the UK together and actually doing a lot of the induction at Downhouse UK. Now, because of the timeline shift to 2022, I'm really hoping that actually we will be able to do some of that, and that I will have the freedom to fly in and out to support that part of the process. And I know my colleagues back at Downhouse UK are really excited to be involved in that induction. The heads of departments, the senior leadership team, they see it as a fantastic opportunity for their own development, and having this whole other network of staff and girls to work with. And that's, again, a really interesting and exciting opportunity for both schools.
I mean, it's really fantastic, kind of rich area for collaboration. So I suppose, how are you going to look at, I suppose, aligning UK and Muscat, and what opportunities do you think there'll be for people to go backwards and forwards?
Well, again, talking about how COVID has given us a bit of an opportunity here, I think with everything shifting online and everyone having to be so creative and inventive in terms of coming up with exciting ways to collaborate and to bring the students together in the UK, let alone globally, I think what we've learned is what we're actually capable of doing across digital platforms. So it's easier than ever, I think, to link the two. We've talked about using virtual reality and really pushing the technology ahead. At Downhouse UK, we're a Microsoft showcase school, so we're really embracing technology, and I hope to again emulate that here in Muscat. And therefore it will, I think, because of the online nature of how schools have been in the last 12 months, it will feel quite natural to have a lesson that's taking place on two sides of the world, and either one or two teachers teaching, across the platforms, and then, travel willing, the exchange programs, the opportunities for girls to move between the two. And we also have a school in France, so there's that extension as well, which is, again, all these opportunities just there to be grasped and developed.
In terms of the teachers, because I mean, I'm really curious. I get asked a lot from trainee teachers who are wanting to go international, or teachers who are international and who do PGC international programs but don't get QTS. Are you looking for QTS benchmarking when you're looking at new members of staff, or is it something maybe like in the independent sector that it's good to have but not compulsory?
One of the challenges here is how we can get visas, actually, and unfortunately, newly qualified teachers are not eligible to get teaching visas here in Oman. So they have to have pretty specific qualifications. However, I think between the two schools, because Downhouse UK has a really strong teacher training element to it, there is a lot of opportunity for us to bring staff out from the UK for periods of time to do some training here internationally. So then hopefully when they finish their PGCs, get their QTS or, the NQT status, and they've got some experience under their belt, or they're looking to a country that doesn't require as many years experience as here in Muscat, then they've got this on their CV. They can, talk about it, and they'll have lots of experience, both hopefully here in person and using the digital platforms.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I do a lot of work with school groups and different memberships, and just that idea of collaboration and learning of each other. I think I totally agree, Michelle. The last year has really elevated that.
Yeah.
The opportunities have been absolutely superb for people to do that. And I remember, it's probably last summer, I had Kai Vasher on, who's British School of Muscat, and he was talking about the stuff that he was doing with his other school.
In Salalah.
Yes, the one.
Yeah, Salalah. Yeah.
About the kind of virtual stuff and the sharing of staff, and that looked great. And I think it's gone even more actually now, just because it's been a longer time that we haven't been face to face.
Yeah, and I think to keep our, as teachers, and for our students, we need to keep them excited and engaged. And hybrid learning is still with us, and I know that in Downhouse UK there are still a number of girls who are still abroad and will require that digital learning. So in that respect, we have to keep it fresh. And I'm really, one thing that I have really enjoyed in the last 3 or 4 months being out here is seeing all the new ideas that is coming out of the UK and thinking, wow, you know, they're still coming up with new and interesting ways to engage the students, not only at the school, but prospective families as well. Obviously, that's the challenge in terms of, you know, can't bring people on site. So how do you market the school virtually and still get the same level of interest? So all of that's been, you know, incredibly great to be involved in, and then to see how that's then moved on since I was there in December.
I suppose it's get the school built first, and then I suppose things. It's what one
Yeah.
stage at a time, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
a couple of more quick fire questions here for you, Michelle. So in terms, you mentioned a couple of people, but in terms of who's inspired you most in your career journey, who comes to mind?
So most definitely Emma, who I've mentioned, Emma McKendrick, who I've worked together with for the 20 plus years at Downe House. You know, I think anyone who's worked with her will say she's an incredibly inspirational person, very forward thinking. She's never stood still, always looking for new opportunities, etc. So I think in terms of working alongside her and developing my own leadership aspirations, and as always with anyone, you will take what you think is positive, and you will be constructive about things that you will want to do differently. So she's definitely someone that's inspired me. From an education point of view, people that have inspired me have often been new teachers that have come in. I won't mention all of them by name, but just sort of grouping them together, and new colleagues, not necessarily in teaching, who are coming into education properly for the first time, and it usually exceeds their expectations. And seeing their careers develop and actually being involved in that and supporting them through it, and that inspires me, because you learn so much from people that bring fresh ideas in. So most definitely, and I think I would say to any of kind of trainee teachers and people who are going into education first time, don't underestimate what you bring, because within teaching, we're always looking for something different, something new, particularly when you're teaching the same. You know, you've been a teacher, Nick, so you know, if you're teaching the same specification or teaching towards an exam year on year, you want to have that injection of excitement. And when you have new teachers come in and bring those ideas in, I find that incredibly inspiring. And then actually more recently, as I mentioned to you, the local staff that we're starting to hire and bring into the team, hugely inspirational. They've taught me a lot in a very short space of time. They've taught me a lot about myself and who I am. Because I think when you're used to working in a certain environment with pretty much the same group of people, you sometimes forget who you are, because you've become something and someone. So not that I've reinvented myself, because I feel I'm still true to who I am, but at the same time, they've challenged me in terms of how I've done things, how I'm going to move things forward. They're so hungry to learn. So that's inspiring when someone wants something from you and you're able to grow together. And as I said, there's no job that's too small. So that's been really a really good opportunity to kind of muck in, actually, and be inspired by those who are just so excited to be part of what you're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In terms of feedback and criticism, what piece of that has most fueled your learning throughout your career?
In terms of criticism that I've had?
Yeah, or feedback.
I think sometimes, and actually my husband is probably pretty good at telling me this, I can be quite spontaneous, and possibly I will jump in with 2 feet, and I'll always try and make the best of that situation. But I think as I've grown up, and you know, I say sometimes to the alumni who I taught when I was much younger, I said, I'm still not a grown up. You know, I'm still that person who taught you drama and English 25 years ago, whatever it was. But I have had to grow up, and I think being a little bit more thoughtful and not thinking you're always right. You know, and actually when someone challenges you and says, do you know, that might not be the best way to do it, or have you thought about this? And I'm someone who really backs myself, and it's okay not to always be right. It's okay for someone else's idea to be better than yours. And that's something I think I've learnt more recently over the years, is how to I suppose not always think that your idea is the best, and to accept that constructive support from other people.
And lastly, Michelle, what piece of advice would you give yourself at the start of your career?
If I look back, I would say it really is, and it probably contradicts what I just said, because I'm actually quite fearless in so many ways. But I think to not be afraid to take risks, and to find that inner confidence, and to always want something better. And I don't think you should be afraid of that, not at the expense of other people, not treading on other people on the way, but bringing other people with you. I think that's what I would say is, you don't have to step on people to get what you want. And have that, take a few risks, but make sure that you've got that sense of team. Because I think I was quite bold and brave when I look back, and probably didn't care as much as I do now about bringing other people along with me. And I need that more than ever here. So, most definitely.
I suppose we're looking to the crystal ball here, but how long do you envisage you're going to be in Muscat, Michelle?
That's a really good question. And actually, I do talk about this with other colleagues, and most people say it'll be 2 or it'll be 10 years. You'll either come in, do what you need to do to get the school up and running, and then it may well be, right, what do I now, where do I go next, where do I want to do this next, is there another Downe House to open somewhere else in the world, and is that my calling? Or is it that I want to see cohorts through, and I want to have that same experience that I've had at Downhouse UK, which is to see generations of girls, grow up and achieve their very best. And that's incredibly rewarding. So really, I can't give you even a crystal ball answer, because I think it's going to depend on how these next few years go in terms of what inspires me next. And that could be the next school, or it could be seeing something through in a different way, because of course I would see the opening through and all of that if that was the way that my mind was operating. So ask me in 2 years and I'll let you know.
Watch this space. It's interesting. I had Mike Seaton on as a guest, and he's opening King's College Chengdu as a founding head, and he just loves that idea of startup, putting your footprint on it. Don't know how long you'll stay there, but he loves that feeling. That's his thing. Other people, as you said, just like to sort of see that, but they really get a kick out of seeing that develop.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of return on investment, isn't it? Because it's blood, sweat, and tears in these first 2 years, definitely. So what is your return? What is it that you get out of it? Is it that I've done that and I'm ready for that blood, sweat, and tears challenge again, or is it I'm actually going to sit back and reap what I've sown here? And that's where I want my return, is to actually see things mature, because it's going to be really interesting. And obviously I've not been in this situation, opening a whole brand new school from scratch, to know where my motivation is going to come from. So it'd be really, really interesting.
That's great. Michelle, thank you so much for being really, really honest and really insightful. It's very, very much appreciated. And I wish you all the best with the opening in 18 months, but I'm sure that there's a long and winding road to get there.
Yes, most definitely. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I would welcome anyone to come and visit, and obviously to keep a track of the project and everything that's going on here. I would thoroughly recommend Oman to anyone who has not yet visited. And also to anyone out there who is thinking about taking on a challenge such as this, or thinking about an international challenge, even if it's not as a principal or head teacher, but as a head of department, or any new role where you're really stepping outside your comfort zone. Back yourself and make the most of those opportunities, I think is my biggest piece of advice to finish with.
Thanks, Michelle. That's a great takeaway. Thank you so much. If you're interested in elevating your leadership practice in partnership with Pursue through our coaching and leadership development packages, or would like to connect to discuss any of the topics in the show, please send me an email at hello@pursue.com or visit our website, pursue.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Nicholas Mackay or Pursue. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and spread the word. We are proud to be developing a truly global community. Take care and look forward to speaking to you again soon.